It's a new edition of our weekly listener mailbag that's coming your way next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and we have a Twitter Tuesday for you today. So I want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And we're coming a little later than usual. For those who don't know, I've been dealing with COVID. I am feeling much, much better. Still not quite out of the woods yet, but on the mend for sure. And let me just take a moment to thank everybody who wrote in and sent prayers, well wishes, and whatnot. COVID is not fun, folks. It's some people are like, well, what's it been like? And is it like a bad cold? Yes, it is like a bad cold, but usually with a bad cold, I would have been over it by now. I would have been over it after 5 days or so. This sucker is hanging in and seems determined to hang in, but enough of that. Let's not talk about COVID. Let's get to the Giants, right? That's why you're here for the podcast. And we've got your questions on this Twitter Tuesday. So we've got about 9 questions, one which came in through our email account, and the rest came in via Twitter. If you want to participate in our weekly mailbag, all you have to do, the instructions are in the show notes, but you can tweet them to me with the hashtag AskPTrain. You can email them to lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. And if you're on YouTube, you could post a comment and just, in our community section. So lots of ways you can get your questions to me, and happy to receive them, happy to answer them. So let's get into it. We've got about 9, and we're going to kick this one off with an email question, actually. And let me just see. The email question was sent in by Jeff S. So who wrote a new listener, actually, to the Locked On Giants podcast. Jeff, shout out to you. Thank you for the kind words. Welcome to the Locked On Giants podcast. Really appreciate that you choose Locked On Giants out of all the Giant podcasts out there to listen to. And so thank you. And my apologies for the delay in getting to your question, but here it is, better late than never. And thank you. So, all right. So Jeff wants to know, Daniel Jones gets a lot of criticism, but like ownership, I'm rooting for him. Can you compare him to any other quarterback in Giants history at this point in his career? All right. Thank you for the question, Jeff. Statistically, if I wanted to, yes, I could compare Daniel Jones to other quarterbacks at this point in his career. But see, here's the problem, Jeff. It's not a true apples to apples comparison. And by that, I mean, let's talk about the big, the first round picks that the Giants have had at quarterback. And we'd have to go Eli Manning. We'd have to go Phil Simms before him. I know Kerry Collins, I think, was a first round pick, but he wasn't a Giants first round pick, so I'm not going to count him. But here's the thing. Eli Manning and Phil Simms had different situations than Daniel Jones. So in Phil's case, for example, he dealt with a lot of injuries the first few years of his career, but he pretty much had the same system, if I'm not mistaken, for the majority of his career. All right, now you look at Eli Manning when he came in. Eli was basically in the same system with the same coaches for the vast majority of his career. Daniel's circumstances have been different. He's had, 3 different head coaches, multiple offensive coordinators. He's never had a decent offensive line, hasn't had a good running game, hasn't had decent receivers. He just hasn't had everything he's needed to be successful or prove that he can be successful. So, if I'm being honest with you, Jeff, I don't think it's fair to compare Daniel Jones to other quarterbacks in Giants history. I really don't, because the Giants have screwed this kid up. I don't know what they were thinking, but they screwed this kid up. It's almost like, management was on one page and I'm going back to when Daniel Jones was drafted, um, you got the impression that they were hoping to get another year or two out of Eli Manning before they had to go to Daniel. But because the head coach at the time, Pat Shermer, decided to make the switch, now all of a sudden, oh gosh, we don't have everything ready for the young quarterback. So I think it was a case of the organization just not being on the same page with regard to the quarterback. And Daniel has suffered as a result of it. Now, as I've said many times, Daniel Jones's struggles are not all the result of the Giants. He's got to take responsibility for some of the things that he still doesn't do well. All right, stuff that goes back to his college years. But, to do a straightforward, apples to apples comparison with other quarterbacks, I just don't think it's fair. And I just don't think it can be done, different circumstances. And I think you have to look at the whole picture to be fair to all the parties involved. So I know that's maybe not the answer you were looking for, but that's how I feel. I'm not going to just, pull up stats and say, oh, Eli was better or Phil Simms was better and Daniel's garbage. I mean, that's just not fair to him. And I'm not going to do that. So, but thanks for the question. And thank you again for tuning into the LockedOn Giants podcast. I appreciate you. All right. Up next, Pete M. I know it's preseason and all teams have injuries, but do you think the Giants are again leading the league in injuries at this early juncture? Pete, I think that's hard to say, to be honest with you, because remember, teams have 90, they started with 90 men. So that's a lot more players who can get injured. So it's kind of relevant. Now, what I am going to do this year is I think I'm going to do, I did this a couple of years ago and I didn't do it, in recent years, but I think I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to track the injuries. I'm going to track the data. I want to see what happens on, if an injury happens on grass, does it happen on the practice field? Does it happen in the stadium? Where does the injury happen? Because I think that would make for an interesting study at the end of the year. But to sit here and say that the Giants are the most injured team at this juncture in the preseason, I don't know that we can say that. It seems like it. I guess we're conditioned because it seems like every time, regardless of who the coaching staff is, injuries happen. But I don't know that we could say that they're the most injured team at this juncture. So sorry, can't give you that answer. All right. Next question comes from Misunderstood. How is the development of Roy Mbaeteka going? By the way, I finally learned how to say the name. I think it's Mbaeteka. So, okay. How is the development going? It's coming along. But see, here's what you've got to remember about Roy. He has never played football before, right? He might have all the tools. He might have all the, the physical traits that you want in an offensive tackle, but developing the technique, developing the timing, developing all the things he needs to develop in order to play at this level, it's going to take some time. I mean, think about it. A lot of the guys that play football have been playing since they were peewees. All right. So they played in Pee-wee, then they played high school, then college, and then they get to the NFL. So by the time they get to the NFL, they've had years and years of experience, albeit, at different levels, playing their different positions. Roy Mbaeteka hasn't had that yet. So he is a work in progress. He does have a lot of good skills. I think right now his biggest issue is because he's so tall, he doesn't play with proper pad level. I think there's also some confusion with certain pass rush moves that are put up against him. But listen, if O.C. Umenyiora thinks this guy is going to be something special, I trust O.C. Umenyiора's opinion because O.C. knows his stuff, and I don't think he would saddle his old team with somebody who they're going to waste their time developing. So, but yeah, Roy's definitely a multi-year project. Maybe we could see him or more of him by next year, depending on how quickly he comes along, but not going to see him this year. And rightfully so. I mean, they've got a roster exemption on him, so you won't see him this year on your practice squad or on your field because of that exemption. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Twitter Tuesday. So stick around. We'll be right back. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, If you were taking countless vitamins and supplements as part of your daily diet, now there is a single product that delivers 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. All it takes is one delicious scoop of AG1 by Athletic Greens to get the key elements necessary to support your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and to slow down aging. AG1 is lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. And it costs less than $3 a day, far less than what it would cost you to purchase and store multiple vitamins and supplements. It's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do to take advantage of this special offer is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and to pick up your ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right. Welcome back, Giant fans, to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I'm Patricia Traina, bringing you a Twitter Tuesday. Again, thank you to everybody who wrote in with the kind wishes on my COVID recovery. I like to think my voice is a little bit better, a little closer to normal. I'm sure you can still hear a little bit of it, but making progress every day. And I do appreciate all the kind words and good wishes that have been sent to me. So let's get back to your questions on the New York Giants. These are all Twitter questions. We hear from CGF, Chicago Giants fan, who asked, do you believe the new scheme is helping the offensive line perform better? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that it does. They're putting an emphasis on getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands quicker. The pre-snap motion is certainly going to help with making adjustments on line calls. The RPOs are going to help. Absolutely. I mean, when you're stationary and you're playing offensive line and you just don't know, especially if the defense is moving around, you don't know what's coming, it puts you at a disadvantage. So I do think that the combination of the scheme and the fact that they've got some experienced guys along the interior has been a big help towards improving the Giants. Now, we haven't seen the full scheme in all its glory. Obviously they're holding stuff back for the regular season, but I am very encouraged by what I've seen so far from the offensive line. We were seeing pockets being developed. We were seeing holes being opened for the run game. This is all stuff we're not used to seeing. And I could get used to it pretty quickly. I don't know about you. So, all right. Thank you for your question. Philip M. is up next. Where does Cam Brown fit in? I hear how athletic he is, but just a special teams ace. Can he move inside? Is he a cut candidate? Philip, I don't think Cam Brown is going to be a cut candidate. He's basically a core special teamer with length, with decent speed, decent physicality. Can he play inside? I suppose he could in a pinch, especially now that you have some injuries to that position. But, you got to remember that every year there are going to be players on the roster that are strictly special teams core guys. Cam Brown's going to be one of them. Thomas McGahee, the special teams coordinator, loves this guy. I don't see them cutting him. I would be very surprised if they cut Cam Brown, who's been a good special teamer for them. So thanks for your question. All right. Next up, we hear from Nicholas De Mora, and I'm sorry, the rest of it got cut off there. Do they have enough cap room to pay any good O-linemen who don't make another team's final roster? Or do you think they already have the O-line for the 53? First part of your question, Nicholas, is no, they do not have enough cap room. They're going to have to redo somebody's contract, and that somebody's probably going to be Leonard Williams. I am expecting any day now, as a matter of fact, to find out that Leonard Williams converted some of his money. They got to get it somewhere because they are not going to have enough to get them through the regular season. Telling you that right now. I mean, I've done the math. Ain't going to happen unless they get some relief somewhere. To pay a good offensive lineman, well, I don't think very many. I mean, if a good offensive lineman becomes available on the waiver wire, how good is he really? Teams need offensive linemen. Tampa Bay, I know, was hurting for offensive linemen because they've had some injuries. So it could come down to a competitive race for an offensive lineman. Do they have the O-line for the 53 already? I think they still need to add to that position, to be honest with you. I'd like to see them get another backup interior guy who could play center. I think they're going to be okay at tackle. But maybe if they add one more piece, just given all the injuries that they've had along the interior and especially at center, maybe I'd feel better there. But, they also have some other pressing needs they've got to address. Cornerback, tight end is paper thin. So, offensive line is going to be a priority, but probably not as high as it would have been a few weeks ago. So thank you for the question. All right, Giant fans, we have about 3 more questions left on Twitter Tuesday, this edition of Twitter Tuesday. We're going to get to those right after this. Hey, business owners, as you gear up for the fall, you need the right people on your team to help make your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make that easier for you. You can find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job posting in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so that your network can help you find the right people. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize whom you like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses like yours rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. Post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. It is a Twitter Tuesday. We're doing your mailbag questions. As always, appreciate them. Great questions. I think I'm one of the luckiest podcasters out there because when I get questions from you guys, they're really good. And I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sending them in because they really make me think. And I do appreciate that. So, all right, we got about 3 more left before we call it a show. This next one is from Curmudgeon68. With the running backs looking impressive, do you think the Giants would be more inclined to deal Barkley by the trade deadline should they get a good offer? Can't envision a scenario where he's here in 2023. No, I don't see that happening. I know back in the, earlier in the year, I saw maybe that might be a possibility, but as I've gone through watching training camp and talking to people and just kind of observing things, I would not be so quick to rule out a possible return by Saquon Barkley. Now, Barkley obviously wants the sun, moon, and the stars in terms of money. That's not happening. He's not going to be back. But if he has the type of year that they think he can have, why would you want to move him? If he's part of your core right now and you're building up this new football team under Brian Dable, why would you want to move him? So, no, I don't see that happening. If the Giants lose and they enter, fire sale mode, maybe. And I think even then it would be a stretch. But at this juncture, I'd be surprised if they move Barkley. I think, Barkley's going to be a key part of that offense. I just don't think it happens. I'll be honest with you. Again, maybe if they lose everything, you see a fire sale, but I'm not so sure that Barkley's going to get moved. So, all right. Next, we hear from Neymar Seghorn. Who do you think makes the team out of David Sills, Alex Bachman and Richie James. Okay. Actually, I think somebody else asked me about receivers. So I'll just lump the question in with this one. Of those guys, I'm thinking David Sills has a good chance of making the roster. Richie James, you know what? I thought maybe we would see a lot more from him as a return specialist, but we haven't. So I'm starting to think that Richie James, who is kind of a slot receiver on a roster that has 2 high draft picks at slot receiver, I don't think there's going to be room for him, if I'm being honest. Bachman, look, I know he had the one good game, but you got to have more than one good game. And he's made some plays this summer, and he's always, made some plays. But I would say out of those 3, Sills probably has the best chance of making the roster at the bottom of the receiver depth chart. That would be my guess out of those 3. All right. I think we have one more question from Independent Outsider. Will there be specific drills for players? I'm talking specifically about Bellinger to prevent him from hesitating and tipping the ball, and Thibodeau to learn how to prevent that knee behind the knee block. I would say probably. All right, let me rephrase this. Actually, coaches do pull together specific drills based on what they observe in the tape. So, will a coach sit with Kayvon Thibodeau and say, hey, look, this is what happened and this is what you should have done? Yes, there are teaching moments. Will there be specific drills? I think you start to see specific drills if it becomes a chronic issue. A one-time thing is not going to maybe necessarily come up with a specific drill. So, for example, with Bellinger, if Bellinger short-armed the pass, which I don't remember if he fully extended or short-armed it. That's just a matter of saying, hey, dude, you've got to, instead of short-arming it, you got to fully extend for the ball. So I think for a drill to actually make it into the practice, it has to be more of a collective thing where the coach sees a group of players at his position group, maybe not doing something that they should be, or they subduing something that they could be doing better. But specifically, I think maybe the players just get pulled aside and they get instructed on how to do better. And that if that situation pops up again next time. So hope that answers your question. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for us on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. As always, appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you keep it here the rest of the week. And we'll continue to bring you new content here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Have a great one, everybody. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.